Hey everybody. So today we're going to be talking about some updates I've done to Sylos so far since my last video. I'm going to try to make this one actually kind of quick because I don't want to drone on forever and ever. But yeah, as always, the first part of the video will be me talking about the updates. Second part of the video will be me talking about what's next and the roadmap. So let's get on with it. So the first thing I did probably, I think, since the last video was I updated the background of the website to be a little bit prettier and kind of flow better with the way the app works. Another thing I did was I changed us from using GitHub to Codeberg. I just haven't updated this part of the website yet, but we actually use Codeberg now, which is a non-profit code hosting platform, very similar to GitHub. It's just that it's like in principle, but it's non-profit and it's EU based and it's not tied to big tech, so I'm not giving Microslop my money basically. I also switched to Linux as well on my own personal computer and development computer, but that's not super relevant for Sylos specifically in that specific regard, but I have been coding Sylos to work for Linux as well. So Sylos will work natively for Linux and Windows when I launch it. So yeah, that's some updates there. I'm not going to spend too long going on some kind of political rant or anything. I just wanted to go ahead and get that out of the way so that it's mentioned, basically. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about the website, or not the website, the application itself. So first thing that I did since the last video, I don't know if I did this already, but I created like a loading screen, as you can see here. It's really, really pretty. There's no sound or anything. It's not blasting you with audio. It's just a little quick thing that kind of introduces you to the software. I just think it's really pretty. It's really cool. So that's one thing. Another thing is I added like a dark mode. So as you can see, the website background, I keep saying the website. I mean, it's technically a website, but the application background is more dark than what it used to be. So that's because I've added themes now. So I added a settings module and I've added themes. So you can select to go back to the previous one if you would like it. And if you want to go back to dark mode, you can do that too. I like dark mode a little bit more because the light mode fits the color theme of what I want more, but it's a little bit too bright personally. And it's also too distracting because it moves too fast. The funny thing is, these are actually two different videos by two different people. They're not the same video. If you notice, the background credit changed. So I think that's kind of funny to me because they're two completely different videos by two different people, but they're so similar that it kind of functions as like a dark and a light mode, sort of. I just thought that was kind of interesting, but nothing really changes if you change the theme other than the background. It's not really changing too much of everything else, so it's not a huge deal in terms of code to have this, so I figured why not. This is also where you turn off that splash screen if you don't want to see the animated logo every time, like the animated little startup thing. So if you saw it once and you're like, I don't ever want to see that again, it was a complete waste of my time, you can turn it off. It doesn't happen on every single page click. Like if I go here, it's not doing it every time. It's not even happening when you refresh every time either. It's only when you're refreshing on this page. But if I go to another page and refresh, it doesn't show it every single time. So that's the only time it's going to come up is when you launch this page, just from scratch basically. But that's it. That's the only time it shows up. So for most people using the app, they're not really going to see it except every time they launch the app. Kind of like a video game, you know, when you see the first logos there. Anyway. Okay, enough talking about that. So another thing that I added, this was sort of internal, but I changed Spectra to only show if you have developer settings because it's a developer tool. So by default, I have it not enabled. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. But basically from there, if you did want to enable it, this is something I've added to allow you to play with it and mess with it, of course. But anyways, that's a very quick minor thing. But let's talk about some of the bigger major changes. So one of the other things I did was I created this sort of test directory, and I created a bunch of scripts that can actually like build up and tear down the directory and allow you to do stuff. So let's talk about that. So I created this test directory where I'm going to select the A folder as my source root and then the B folder as my destination root. There we go, just like this. And now one thing that I did was I didn't touch B at all, but I locked down A so that its permissions are super locked down and it won't be able to see what's inside the items folder inside of A. So let's go ahead and start our discovery here. And that's basically near instantly because it's only one item, so it's extremely fast. But from there you can see I can't click into this because it wasn't able to traverse anything inside of it. You can see it has the failed icon, and so that will allow me to mark that I want to retry it. One other thing that I added real quick, I'll go ahead and tell you about this. I added tooltips as well, and this is just kind of like to help people in a way that it basically explains, like these particular tooltips here basically explain that you can actually click these icons, and if you click the icons it will change the status, and you can click it again to unchange it basically. So that's kind of what these are telling you essentially is what they're saying. I also added a tooltip here because this is what we found on the destination, but this isn't your entire destination folder contents. This is just what overlaps with what's on the source basically for the most part. So that's kind of what this is basically saying. So, okay. So, from there, so like I said, I intentionally coded this to fail. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark this item to be retried. Notice it says item marked for retry. And now this button changes because it's going to say retry discovery. So now, if I undo that, it's just going to go to the copy phase, the next phase. Of course, in this case, there's nothing to copy because the only item that was there failed. But if there was other items here, it would be fine to go ahead and start copying. It just wouldn't bring over anything inside of this folder. But I do want it to retry this folder because this folder has very important contents that I want it to find. So I take a look at my file system and I notice that it failed, and I'm going to try to go ahead and figure out why it failed. Now this is actually one thing I need to add, is I need to add why the thing failed. I feel like that would actually help people to know. I don't know why I didn't think about this like earlier on. I mean, I kind of did conceptually, but I didn't really think about actually coding it in for a while for some reason. I don't know why. I guess I got so caught up in just the general here's how this works rather than like the nitty gritty details like that. But anyway, let's assume that it tells you why. The reason is because of permissions, because I ran that script that locks the folder down. So what I would like to do is run the script that re-enables access to that folder. So now we did. So now this item is marked for retry. So now I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, I am ready to retry this item because I have fixed it on my file system and it should work this time. So let's go ahead, and it says, hey, we'll try to discover what was in those folders that you marked to retry. We'll send you back here to review the results when the process is complete. Would you like to proceed? This isn't technically accurate because it doesn't send you back here automatically. You have to go click the button, and I'll show you what I mean. So pretty much instantly it'll be done, which it was. So you still have to click the button to get back here, but yeah. Anyway, okay, so now we can actually see what's inside the folder, and from there we can actually see that there are items inside of here. So there's extra folder, which exists only on the destination. There's subfolder A and subfolder B. Subfolder A exists on the source, but not on the destination. Subfolder A exists on both, because that's what the check mark means. Subfolder B only exists on your destination, and they're marked with a specific check mark. And this item is pending, which means it only exists on the source. So if it's pending, it's going to be brought over to your destination, because this is a one-way sync. So that's kind of the whole point. Okay. So from there, basically I want to go ahead and start the copy phase. But before I do that, I'm going to run a fancy little script here again to deny access to everything in this folder. So now, when the script tries to go grab this file and, what was that other file it was going to grab? I think it was this one. Yeah, this file. So when it tries to grab this file and this file to bring over to the destination, it's not going to work because I just denied access on the file system. So let's go ahead and start the copy phase. and it's pretty much done, quote unquote, near instantly. So from there, you can see that when I go into this folder, you'll see that these are failed, and that's on purpose, again, because we ran that script. So now let's go ahead and run the script to restore again, and then we can go ahead and mark these to be retried automatically. And if you wanted to find where all the failures were, you could just open up a list view and it would show you like this. But anyway, okay, so actually I just noticed that's a bug because these are marked as retry on this view but not on the list view, which is very interesting. I think I know why. I think it's because when it first loads the page, it loads both of these at once, but any changes you make over here might not reflect over here immediately. Because if I were to try to mark this to be retried, it would already be retried, so it would fail. Okay, noted for later. I'm not going to go too deep into that right now. That's a UI thing. It's not a big deal. But these are actually marked to be retried. I just wanted to show you that. Okay, so now let's go ahead and remember I did run the script to restore access, so this should actually work this time. And again, it's done near instantly. That's pretty much to be expected. So from there, you can see that now they're checkmarked. So now they do exist on both. So that's basically the general flow of how I want this software to work. I just wanted to show you that as a visual, conceptual thing of what I'm trying to tell you. But basically, that's kind of my general idea is I want to be able to select my source and my destination root folders on whatever service it is. Dropbox, Box, OneDrive, SharePoint, whatever, I don't care. Or your local hard drive, doesn't matter. And once I select my root folders and services, then I want to go ahead and start discovering what's inside of those. And then from there, the user can kind of click through or look at them all in a single list and page through it. Or they can click through the folder tree and say, okay, this is in this folder, this is in this folder, whatever. And then from there, basically, once we have that laid out and you're like, okay, I don't want you to bring over this item, I don't want you to bring over this item, whatever. Once you get done marking all those things, then we move on to the copy phase where we're actually copying the data over at that point. And I do also want to support moving as well. Moving is the same thing as copying, except in this case you're deleting the items from the source as well. But that's kind of a risky thing to do. So it's iffy for me to want to implement something like that because I just don't like the idea of actually deleting data from anyone's system. That seems kind of scary to me. But I mean, I do trust the software. I just feel like it's one of those scary things to me, I guess, in a sense. But anyway, then you start the movement phase after you finish the traversal phase. And if anything failed at any point in any of these phases, you can always mark some items to be retried and try it again from there. So that's basically the general gist of what I'm saying, you know? That's kind of what I'm saying here, because ultimately that's where I want to be with this. And I did test this on a local file system too. Of course, we just did a local file system, but I mean, I've tested this on larger scales, so I don't really want to do this if I do this during the recording, it might kind of bog my computer down because Sylos is very, very fast and it uses as much compute power as you can give it. And right now my computer is sort of competing with OBS to record everything. So I don't want to hurt the recording too much, but we'll see if we can record basically a generic migration. But anyway, this is just it traversing the same root folders on both. So it's going to be a one-to-one traversal. Everything should match in theory, not in practice though, because operating systems are a little bit confusing and they have temporary folders and they'll lock down a folder and then unlock a folder at random times. So there's going to be some artifacts, but for the most part, it should be pretty straightforward of a one-to-one match. But anyway, so again, I put little tooltips here. This is it's explaining how it's taking this average and what it means and all that. And then there's another one here. It's kind of the same thing. This is one that I wanted to mention. This isn't everything inside of your destination. It's just everything that is overlapping with your source. So that's what that tooltip means. But if you notice, you can actually toggle the tooltips on and off if you don't want to see them anymore. And if you want to show all of them or not show any of them, you can turn them off. If you're a pro user, whatever, right? So I thought that was kind of cool. Okay, so while we're waiting on this to finish, let's talk about roadmap. So I just finished migrating all the code to Codeberg, and I just finished, well, almost finished. I have to update the website to say Codeberg instead of GitHub. But otherwise, it's pretty much finished. I just switched my computer to Linux, and I've been testing this on Linux too. So that part's kind of done in a sense. The only things that are really left are still very big things and a lot of small things. But for the most part, I think in theory, if we had infinite time, or not so much infinite time, but the same amount of productivity that I have now forever, I could probably get this done in like 2 or 3 months at most. But I am a real person with real needs, and I need to devote time to other things in my life. And so I don't think that this is going to be one of those things that I can actually realistically have done in that time frame. I think we're looking at more like 3 to 6 months, I think, is a better time estimate of how long it'll take me, but who knows? But let's talk about some of the big things I have to finish. One of which is like just stability updates. This software is a little bit sprawling, needs a little bit refactoring. There's some things that are a little fragile that I would like to make not so fragile. There's little bugs here and there, like that UI bug that you saw with the retry thing, and then there's the one where the text was way over to the left, like little things like that, you know. But then there's also bigger things. In terms of bigger features that I need to implement, one of which is the autoscaler. So I need to build the autoscaler, but I have like 30% of it done conceptually. It's just a matter of actually implementing it. And another thing that I need to work on is the cloud storage support. So things like supporting Dropbox and OneDrive and SharePoint and Google Drive and all these things. And that's going to take some time, but it shouldn't take too terribly long, I guess. But it will take some time to implement. It's not extremely easy to do, but I think it shouldn't take too terribly long to implement. Another thing that I need to do is I need to implement the installer in the software so that we can actually have you like install the software and run it and all that fun jazz. Whenever you click to install a piece of software from any website, that installer was built by someone. Like it's not just that every code that you make always comes with an installer, because that's not how it works. You usually have to build the installer using predefined frameworks like NSIS or whatever it's called, like with Windows and a couple other things. So yeah, so that's something I'll have to work on. That'll take me like a week or so, maybe a weekend if I can knock it out. It's not extremely difficult. It's just a little tricky. There are some things you have to do to it. Another thing is the path filtering logic. So I didn't show this in the video, but basically at some point right before you start the traversal process of the discovery, before you start the discovery, like what we just did, I want to give an option that says like input any filters here that you might want. Like for example, I don't want you to move any PDFs. I don't want you to go into any folders that say like 2024 if we're in 2025, stuff like that. So those kinds of rules, and maybe like regex pattern matching, things like that, I would like to group and filter like a big Mongo aggregation pipeline type thing, maybe with logical joins and other things. So it kind of is going to look like a SQL query. So I want to create my own sort of like almost like a query language in a sense for rule parsing. And that's going to involve, that's like its own whole task, because it needs to be implemented on the UI. There needs to be components where you can add and drop extra sections and things like that. There needs to be a JSON serializable aspect to it where it serializes to JSON, passes the JSON to the API. The API then saves it, validates it, saves it, and then passes it to the migration engine. The migration engine then opens it, parses it. I guess it doesn't need to open it because we can just pass the memory item directly to the migration engine. But it basically reads the data, parses it, and the traversal workers need to interpret it and use it. So there's like 4 or 5 different components that has to be touched to make this work. But the task itself is pretty isolated, and I think it's isolated in a conceptual sense because you don't really need to understand the entire code to know how to build something like this. So this is something I want to build. How do I want to say this? This is something that I want to help or get help on. I want to find a contributor is what I'm trying to say, because I think it's something that could be pretty isolated and it could be a good task for someone if they want to tackle that. I think I could lay out the whole thing. I could lay out every piece of code that this needs to touch for the most part. And with the help of like AI coding and stuff, you can knock it out. It's not super difficult, but yeah. So cloud storage support, autoscaler, rate limiting backup, things like that. Installer, that needs to be the last thing that we work on. Path filtering and a couple other things. And then I think if we can finish all those things and maybe a few other pieces, just like little side and add-on pieces and quality of life features, things like that. I think if we can do most of that stuff, we can get to a beta testing phase. And once we start beta testing, I'd say we beta test for like 2 or 3 months and then we could launch. So total timeline would be like 3 to 9 months, depending on how fast I go and what my next few months look like. So I think in reality, we're not that far away from launching this software completely. In fact, I'm actually pretty close to being able to give this software to my friends and saying, here, see if you can test this out. See if you can break it. Because I'm getting close to a point where the software just works in a lot of ways. And it just works really well. So that's really, really cool. But anyway. So I just thought that was kind of nifty. And I wanted to share all that. But that's basically where I'm at with this. I'm not going to spend too long talking about everything. I think I could drone on forever, and that would be really annoying. So I think from there, we'll just probably stop there, I guess. Oh, real quick. I also added the sidebar. I don't know if you noticed. I kind of glossed over this. There's a few buttons on the sidebar. This button is actually a dead button. It doesn't do anything. It's going to link to a page that's going to show you the Discord server, the Codeberg link if you want, so you can post an issue on the repository for like reporting bugs, and then maybe a link to like the documentation or something so that you could then read the documentation and try to learn what it is on your own. So that's, I think, what I'm going to put on that page. And this page will take you to the Codeberg link. So if you're really interested in wanting to help out with Codeberg, or help out with the project on Codeberg, you can. So that's what that link does. And then this button actually takes you back to the main page where you can either resume an existing migration that you just started, like how we just did, or you can start a whole new migration and go from there. So that's basically just like a quick link that takes you back to the beginning if you want to do that. And then we have the settings, of course, like I showed you. There's the appearance, the tips, and then I also showed you the developer mode settings. That's about all we have right now, but that's, yeah. Anyway, just wanted to share that. Okay, well anyway, thank you guys for watching. I'm going to shut up now, finally. I appreciate it. Any feedback you have, that's great. I'm still early in my development of this, in a sense. So, any feedback you have, I've probably already thought myself and is probably on the roadmap, but you're welcome to share it anyway, because any input is always appreciated. So, okay. Well, I will see you guys later. Thank you so much for watching. Take care.